Hey everyone, welcome back to the POTA Performers, part of my channel here. I'm Stuart Victor Echo 9 Charlie Foxtrot, and I don't need to go through the whole preamble, but we just bring cool people from the POTA community on to talk about everything we like to do in ham radio, most of it around portable. And today I have another adventurous type of fellow. You all know Max N4TRD. Hey Max, good to see you, my friend. How are you been keeping?
Hey Stuart, it's great to be here. It's an honor to actually be on your show. I don't really consider myself a professional actor or hunter like the rest of y'all, but it's nice to be out here. I thought maybe since I activate 90% of the time, I would bring my truck out here and activate from a threefer. I'm currently in the Burkhead Mountains, which is part of the Uwharrie National Forest. It's literally the oldest mountain range on the East Coast. So I'm out here with my wife. She's over in the sun because it's kind of cold. We're up about, 2,000 feet. But yeah, it's to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you, my friend. Great to have you. We've talked numerous times on the radio and stuff. So it's nice to actually put a face to the voice and to the call sign and all that good stuff. So, I mean, you're one of the adventurous types of POTA guys. I've talked to a lot of adventure types lately. Another one up in Northern Ontario, VA3FOJ. He's a fairly relatively new guy. I love talking to adventure folks. I kind of, when I grow up in ham radio, I want to be like y'all. Get out there, take the truck out, and camp in the back of the truck. Gary mentions he does the same thing. Hey, before we get into all that stuff, just tell me about ham radio. How did you get involved in ham radio?
All right, so there's a little bit of lag with the Starlink. We are under a canopy, so if I lag a little bit, I guess you'll edit it out.
It's all good. I can do that.
Okay, so I go way back to 1979. My father was a ham, but he was kind of rag chew a little bit, but not real active, on and off, on and off. He had a buddy who was a pastor at the church that got on every night at 7 and did the weather report, and very, very old school. And in 1979, I probably was in 5th grade, and he literally handed me the ARR handbook. That's how far back in the day, the ARR handbook was the Bible of amateur radio, and that's how everybody studied. And, being in 5th or 6th grade, I was like, yeah, right. Fast forward a couple years, in our little club where there was another gentleman who was the sergeant at the local police force. He was heavily ham radio, a tower, a Yagi, Big Ten Tech guy. I was going to school with his daughter, and she mentioned he's going to have a class. And back then in 1982, 1983, you had to learn 5 words a minute for novice, and then general was, I think, 12 or 13 words a minute. And he had a class for 6 weeks. On Tuesday nights we met at the school, and 12 of us got licensed together. And I consider Al my Elmer, if you will, or my mentor. Yeah, it was great. I got, I was a coder and CW for the first couple of years, and then I graduated high school and went into the Army, did ROTC scholarship, went active duty, got deployed for the first Gulf War. And my father, which I still have, he has a phone patch, HF phone patch. So I got a little bit involved with Mars, not so much. Back in the day, it was RIDI, AmTor, and PACTOR, which worked a lot better than HF, especially I was over in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait, floating around before we went into Iraq. But yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. I came home. I was stationed in Florida for a couple of years. I got into a local club that it was the original guys that built the original Motorola towers, and passed my general at, I can't remember if it was 12 or 13 words a minute. I had to drive from Tampa, where I was stationed at Southcom, and went to Orlando, took my test, passed it. I was a general. And my father passed away, and my mother put all our equipment in a shed, literally. My wife and I, a little bit before COVID, we got into overlanding, off-roading, rooftop tenting. More overlanding is point-to-point roads, get our dirt road therapy. So we did that for about 2 years all over the country. I was contracting for a State Department for the U.S. Well, I don't want to say what I did. It's not top secret or anything. It's just not very exciting or relevant. And yeah, so we were in Virginia at a state park there was an outfitter called, well, they're still around. They're called Blue Ridge Overlanding Gear, and they sponsor a Blue Ridge rooftop tent rally. And I had saw the videos, and it's something my wife and I decided to do. So we went for a weekend, and we camped out with like 400 other rooftop tents. And there was a VE session going on, and I wandered over, and these guys were doing this Parks on the Air. And I was like, well, that's kind of cool. And, I kept my license, here in the States, it's 10 years or whatever it is. So I kept it active, and it was, I can't remember if I had my 8 call or I must have had my 8 call from Michigan because I went to college in Michigan. It wasn't my 1 call from New England. Anyway, so I kind of was looking at Parks on the Air. I drove up and got the rest of my father's equipment, dusted it off, and Thanksgiving of 2023, the day before or day after Thanksgiving? It was like around that time I went out and did my first POTA activation. And I'm not kidding. I didn't know anything. I didn't really know how to activate. My wife and I hadn't really got into YouTube. I haven't found you and all the other guys that actually put out content. I activated on 7.220 or 7.200.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Oh yeah, we all know what happens there. Yeah.
Well, they were gentle on me because I said, hey, I don't know. I haven't been into ham. This is my first activation. And my wife videoed it, and we get a chuckle out of it. It's kind of funny, but I got my 10 barely, and I was all nervous, and I was done. Like, 45 minutes of, how it is the first activation, scary. And then I guess I was a casual activator, casual ham. I threw up a 10 through 40 end fed in my backyard. I had my dad's radio on the kitchen table. I kind of cut a hole in the door, ran the coax out, and all of when 2023 went to 2024, the beginning of 2024, I began to realize there was a POTA community, Parks on the Air, Casey, Kilo Golf 9, Juliet Papa. Every day I'd get him on like 15, 17, and 20. And then, it's, you and I have talked about this, there are certain people, like you're always 5'9" to me. Typically I can get you on 17, 20, sometimes 15, but you're always loud. And sometimes I hear you on 10, but there's about a dozen, people out there, operators that I can hear about all the time. And I started working them. And as I got to know them, we started chatting. And what really happened was my wife and I went out west, and, I had people like Brandon Kilo Zulu 4 Charlie Papa. He was following me around from park to park, and we did like Montana, Utah, Colorado, Wyoming. We spent like 6 weeks out there, and I activated casually. And we came back, and we immediately turned around and went to Florida. There's something called the Florida Adventure Trail. It's an overlanding trail. Right now it's 2,300 miles. It was 1,600 miles. It starts up on the Georgia border. It goes all the way down the Key West, then wraps up the west side and goes all the way through Egg Space. And it ties into Alabama Adventure Trail. And there's a South Carolina SCAR, the South Carolina Adventure Trail. While I was down in Florida, I activated, when you're camping, it's easy to get 500, 600, 1,000 QSOs. You're sitting there camping and, having a beer. And, my wife at the time, she wasn't a ham. So she would do her campfire, and I would activate and cook and eat and, ride our e-bikes and hang out. And that was a great, 2 or 3 week experience. And I started activating more and more and more. And I can't remember who it was. It was one of the big hunters. I can't remember if it was Joe or Toby. Someone said, boy, your stats are getting up there. You're doing well. Keep going. You might be top 10. I was like, and at the time I wasn't really tracking stats, or I didn't really care too much. And I didn't think that was the thing. And I didn't know you could drill down in POTA. Or, I want to talk a little bit about WWFF too as well. I had no idea. So I started, I was able to drill down, and I was like, oh, I'm like number 2 or 3. And then once you looking at stats, it becomes, a race against yourself. Yeah, it was good. Last year was really good, and I met you. As a matter of fact, you and I talked. I don't know if you could see. This is actually a trail that comes through here, and I parked right in front of the state sign, and you and I talked there. You were like, call me because I can't call you. So I called you and we talked about the end fed, the difference on end fed when you put it up in the air versus down. And, back then I was, happy just to talk to Joe up in, as you say, up in New England every day and get my numbers. And then, I closed out the year and it was good. And I did well in WWFF. I attribute the WWFF experience. You got me into it. Al Zena is a big proponent. He kind of pushed me along. It's good. That's kind of brings us up to now.
So
I know I just talked a lot. You didn't even talk.
I was just listening. I
could go on and on.
Attentively listening. That's what I was doing. Yep. So a couple of things I want to pull out of there, because you mentioned Mars. I actually, when I was in Cyprus around the same time that you guys were in Iraq, I was doing UN peacekeeping in Cyprus. That was 1992, I think. I was running the Canadian equivalent to Mars. And I remember the phone patching, because we didn't have like the technology we have today, like Starlink and Facebook Messenger and all this stuff. Yeah, it was getting on. Hey, honey, I love you. Over.
I'm still alive.
Yeah.
And people forget on phone patch, you're still keying. You got a key, and you can't just have a two-way conversation. I mean, it's a keying, and a lot of times the spouses, they're just so excited to hear that you're alive. It was great. I mean, it was a good time.
We would have a line out the door at our estate. I remember where I was in Leisure Palace in right Nicosia in Cyprus. It was like right on the green line. So the Turks on one side, the Greeks on the other, and we're in the middle. Refereeing the whole thing. And it was an interesting experience. So you got that. Thanks for the good story on how you got into POTA, because that's one of the other questions I asked, is how do you get involved in POTA? So let me spin it a different way now. One of the things I like about POTA, Max, and there's a lot of things I wish POTA can do differently to make it even better, but that I don't have the powers to make those or influence those changes. I asked the POTA executive if they'd love to come on this program, and they respectively declined. I'm not sure why, but they did. But there's a lot of things that they can do better, and this program's not about that. They do a lot of things that are great. And one of the things that I really like about Parks on the Air, and all the OTA, they're all the same, is it doesn't matter your activation habits or your styles or whatever. There's something for everyone. So if you have the casual activator who goes out with their husband and wife going on a Sunday afternoon to play some Parks on the Air and rag chew and chit chat with all their friends, you can do that. Or you can do it like run and gun contest style, like I do. There's something there for everyone. And for you guys in the I call it the adventure crowd. One of the things I like about you folks is you put a lot of new parks on that a lot of people don't go to.
Yeah, and I know one of the questions you're going to ask, about Parks on the Air and my style of activation is that's what I can appreciate hunters that want to hunt as many parks or all the parks. And if any hunter needs parks and reaches out, I feel that's kind of my satisfaction. I want to go to those parks. The great thing about being in Utah and Colorado, there's all those parks no one can get to, and being able to get to those parks and activating it. And then, the hunters that are thankful that you take the time and the expense to go out there, they're very, it's a great relationship. And, as far as Parks on the Air or WWFF, or, you told me about the castles on the air when I was up in Canada activating, beaches on the air, lighthouses on the air. There's something for everybody. And within each category, there's also subdivisions. You could, if you're into CW, power to you, digital, power to your phone. I've been, I really like certain parts of digital. I think FT2 and FT4 and FT8 have a place in all of it. I personally don't really like to do it, but at the end of the night, when my wife and I are sitting by the campground, it's great to put FT8 on, and the people that want to hunt FT8, it still gives them a chance. And it's not really, I just turn the volume down, and I could do it sitting by the campfire with Kilo Romeo 4 Mike Alpha X-Ray.
Hello.
It's funny you mentioned that, because when I go camping, Missy this year has given me the you can go camping, but I'm not going with you. I guess that's an open invitation to go camping. I said, are you sure I can go camping? Because usually when the wife says, you can go, but I'm not going with you at Disney. That means I think that's a code for I don't really want you to go. But she's got some reasons why I'm not going to get into here why she doesn't want to go. And our little Chihuahua doesn't camp very well. He barks at everything, so she's kind of a little nervous that way. But when I go camping, I do the same thing. You know, usually when it starts getting dark, I'll turn off the SSB and just go pure digital because I'm not interfering with anyone. You know, I'm not
loud.
I'm not loud. I had a guy last year, I think it was or 2 years ago. We were at Lake Tamascuda in Quebec, and he comes to me and says, "I can hear you 5 sites over." Missy says, "Well, he's a little excited." So
yeah, you know, Rhonda hushes me up. You know, when I'm at dusk here, and the hunters on like 15 and 17 meters. I do really well in 15 or in 17 meters, but the occasional DX, like for the Southeast, you get 1 out of 15, 1 out of 10, 1 out of 15. You get a good DX station. Whether it's an Oast, Oscar hotel, whatever. I get all fired up, and of course I have my headset on, and then I'm like, and I ramp it up, especially if it's a hunter I know. Some of the German hunters I'm getting to be pretty good friends with, and there's all the French guys and the Spanish guys and Italian guys. It seems like it's the same 2 or 3 dozen guys. I still get all amped up when I talk to them. It's still DX. It's still fun to me.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%. I'm the same way. I was just actually editing a video from when I went out. About a month ago. I bought a little cheap dipole or balun off of Amazon, $30, and I made a 20-meter dipole. I said, "Can I work DX on this thing?" So I hooked it. I put it on top of like 20 feet of army camouflage tent poles, and ran out the dipole. And I was just editing the video. And that was a good afternoon. I had like 500 some odd contacts, and 50% of them were outside of North America. So that's always a good day when you get to me. That's when you get a bunch of DX. I know everybody's interests are a little different, but I'm a DXer at heart.
Yeah, you and I have talked about this, about locations. Here in the Southeast, I consider DX like a drug. It gives you just enough to want more, but never enough to be enough. I have some days where I go out with literally a ham stick and a single mag mount on my daily driver is a Prius, but I'll stick that up here and go out, stop by a park on the way somewhere. And all of a sudden, I don't even get off 12, 15 and 17 meters. And it's, 150 DX only stations. And it's, it's like, yes, if it was like that every day, then I guess it wouldn't be exciting. I don't know. I watched a video, and I don't know, is it Coastal Waves that did the beach activations?
Yeah, well, yeah, Salty Walt, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so I wasn't sure if it was the same guy, but I watched that, and he gave me a lot of ideas, and I did a lot of research on some of his antenna builds, and, I don't really do antenna. I'd like to tell you I explore antennas, but a lot of times, just throwing a vertical on a tripod is just as good. Elevated radials on the ground, 90 degrees, 180 degrees. To me, it all works the same. When the bands are open, they're open. I mean, with 10 meters is open, you put some tinfoil on the back of your, and it's gangbusters. It's a wonderful thing. But
yeah, last weekend I went out. I reverse engineered the 4-wave or the Eagle One, whatever they're talking about now, the big hype antenna of choice for this week. And I reverse engineered it and built one of my own. And 33 feet 4 inches vertical, so a half wave vertical on 20 meters. And I put 3 counterpoises out, all equal distance apart from each other. And the bands were just brutally bad. They were terrible on the weekend. And I still managed to have a great afternoon out at I was at the far end of the Bay of Fundy, and it was a great afternoon. I just did 20 meters because I didn't want to. It is a multi-band antenna, but I just said 20 meters is the only band that's open, right? So I had to stay on 20 meters, and it worked okay. I mean, it wasn't great, but it was okay. I had 400 QSOs. So I guess for me, that's kind of that's okay. For some, that's great. For me, it's all right. I wish I could do better. But I was operating as VE9 RAC for the World Amateur Radio Day, so it was an honor to use that special call sign for the day. But
that's the military run, right?
now that is for Radio Amateur Canada. So every section Canada gets an RAC call for Radio Amateur. So it's the national clubs like the AWL in the US. It's our national entity. So we get we have VE9 RAC in New Brunswick, and all the other provinces have their own designation. But you mentioned going to Utah. I'm actually taking a trip out this summer. We're leaving just before your Independence Day and after our Canada Day. So that was 2 or 3 days in between. After the Canada Day contest is over, we're packing up and we're heading out west. We're actually going out to Alberta this summer, and we're going to be driving. So we're going to be stopping along the way. Now, I'm not taking the truck. I'm only bringing the BMW, so we're not going to be going anywhere exotic, roadside parks, But I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to be hitting some new parts of the country that I have never activated from.
Yeah, going out west is a different world, and there's depending on where you go, it's totally different. Utah, North Utah and South Utah are totally different. You get into Colorado, it's breathtaking. You get up into the Grand Tetons and Yellowstone, it's magical. We went out 3 years in a row, always around July. Now, of course, if you're coming down through, I don't know if you're coming down through Great Glacier, through Montana, or how you're getting there. You honestly got to be careful. In June and early July, there's snow in parts. Because I know on I think it was July 7th, we were on where were we? Beartooth Highway through North Montana into Yellowstone, and it was July 6th or 7th, and there was still a foot of snow on top of some of those 14,000 foot mountains. And we're coming over, and they do a great job with snow clearing. I mean, you're in Canada, so I don't need to tell you about snow clearing, but there's still a ton of snow.
Yeah, we're going, when we go out there, we're going I got to pick up my dad along the way. And so we're going to be driving through Northern Ontario, the northern route through Northern Ontario. So going further, basically going up and then hitting up the northern shore of Lake Superior. And then when we get into Manitoba, we're going to branch off and take the Yellowhead Highway, which goes through Saskatoon and Edmonton way. And then on the way back, we're taking the Trans-Canada back, which goes down to basically Calgary and heads east from there. And so we'll hit different spots. There's a military base along that route that I served at when I was, in my young 20s, that I haven't been back since. So I want to go check it out and see what's changed since I've been there. I'll hit that and stay a couple of days there and see what's around and see if there's any of my old friends are still around there. But that's all part of the ham radio adventure. And Max, maybe you can second this. A lot of guys I talked to said, if it wasn't for ham radio or Parks on the Air or whatever, they wouldn't go some of the places they go today.
I agree 100%. I mean, this year, my goal is to camp at every state campground in North Carolina and South Carolina. We were doing really well with Georgia, but I had a work event last weekend with the Georgia Parks on the Air weekend. And we're looking at camping, and work pays the bills, got to work. So we had an awards banquet on Saturday night, so I wasn't able to participate. But yeah, my wife has gotten her ticket. We've gotten to go to some. I mean, I'm weird. I go to every battlefield, and I stop at cemeteries and try to find the oldest headstone. I think that's cool. I try to find unique places out in the middle of nowhere, and on the way to and from. And some of the parks are kind of cool. Some of the battlefields are kind of cool to visit. And I have a great time. I've never had any pushback or any issues with rangers, and they've been more than accommodating. But there are 100% places here in the States, and even in Calgary and Edmonton, where I've activated in Canada during business trips. I mean, I would have never gone. The time you worked me, and I was at the old fort monument that was out in the middle of nowhere. Would I go to that ruins? Would I go? I mean, there's no way I'd go to that. No way. So it gives me the excuse to go out and adventure and have fun. And, at the end of the day, it's a destination. So, with the destination, you plan, and that's the fun part. There are guys here in North Carolina that we talk a lot. Part of our excitement is opening different maps, checking boundaries. Down here in North Carolina, there's a group of us. We all do the 13 colonies together. We're K2J. And that group of people they're POTA activators and POTA hunters. And, we all get together and kind of open up 4 or 5 different mapping programs, and we'll map out boundaries to we try to outdo each other. Who's going to find the next 3 fur or 4 fur or 5 fur or 100 fur or whatever. That's the excitement of it.
Yeah, it's just a great part of the hobby, and yeah, Parks on the Air just puts it together in a nice package for us to go do it. But easy enough to go out and do it on your own. You don't have to have the program. But the Parks on the Air program gives you the guys out there that are going to call you when you get out there, right? That's the nice thing about it. And for us to sit there and just call CQ over and over and over again, it's still fun, but you wouldn't get the numbers that you get without I call it the POTA crutch of supporting you, right? So you again, tell me, Max, what are some of the things that you learned, over the years of doing this that you can share with, somebody who's getting into Parks on the Air for the first time?
Well, I've learned that I brought this specifically for you because you have yours in your background. So I learned you don't need 700 watts.
Which one is that now?
That's the Mercury Light.
That's right.
I was hell bent to get it, and it's great for home to bust up, for hunting, but out here you don't need it. I find very little. What I've learned is 10 watts or 700 watts. It doesn't matter. You're still going to get your 10 activation. Having said that, I target 44. You know why? Because of WWFF. I try to target 50. That's what I consider a successful activation. I try to get into a cadence. And, when it's good, it's good. I do 150 to 200 an hour. It just depends on band conditions. But the major takeaway and the biggest thing I learned is, it's all about the antenna and not about the power. But, the power is about bragging rights.
Yeah, I would agree. I just bought myself, what did I just buy? An Ameritron SL 500. It's the old pre MFJ buyout 500 watt DC amplifier for mobile. So a guy was selling it in Edmonton, so I said I'm gonna go buy that off him. It was $500. I said, you know what? The RM Italy one I blew up a couple months ago I paid a lot more than $500 for it. So it's funny. I blew up one of my amplifiers driving it too hard. So pushing it too hard on digital. That's what the problem was. I was pushing it way too hard on digital. You're funny. You're the second guy with one of those Mercury Lights now, because Alpha Charlie 1 Radio Hotel runs one as well. And as I was going to say, why do you sound so good all the time? Well, now I know you got that. And, but more importantly, antenna, and antenna height, or I love the KJ60R Performer. That's kind of my, if I'm just going out for the day and not trying to do anything to test something, that's the antenna I put up now. It's the KJ60R Performer. I've talked all over the world on that simple quarter wave vertical with the elevated radio.
Yeah, I watched his podcast, and I've done a bunch of research about I think the POTA Performer and the POTA Challenger. I built a Challenger with a 4-to-1 that I want to start activating with. The science is behind his antennas, and they work. I've seen your video. There's a bunch of other videos out there about the POTA Performer. It's on my list. A lot of times I like to come out and activate, and I know throwing radials on the ground, you might have a loss. I'm still getting 200, so I know there are guys that are into I know, and there's nothing wrong with that. They're they want to build the perfect antenna. I just find that sometimes you don't get that much gain. It's kind of like the amplifier. And today's the third time I've had it out on an activation, to be honest with you. It's just another thing to lug along that really doesn't make a difference at the end. Now, who knows when, as the sun cycle gets worse, the bands get worse and worse. Last weekend was pretty brutal. If I could run 700,000 kilowatts out in the field, I would have, because those poor Georgia guys, they're fighting to get 100 QSOs in 48 hours. It was brutal.
Yeah, and my last 2 activations, I ran no power at all, just basic. I bought myself a second FTDX10, and the antennas that I've been testing, they're not resonant on any particular band, so you need to have the tuner. So I love and that's why I took the FTDX10. I just have the button that says tune. I use that, right, instead of taking the external tuner with the 891 and lugging all that extra stuff around. So my last 2 activations have been barefoot. And I echo you. I'm like, sometimes, you know what? I did 500 and some odd QSOs on one and 400 and something last week on poor band conditions. So antenna, location is also very important. And, the other thing too, Max, that we can talk about it briefly is just spotting yourself properly. Not just, one of the things I like about doing worldwide flora and fauna, as soon as you spot yourself there, you're on the DX bus. So you get out there outside of the POTAverse, and more people have a chance to work you because your frequency is being shared with more people.
I agree with you 100%. That's exactly why I'm what Al says, a dual activator. I enjoy the hunters coming in from Europe and hunting you specifically, but I find that it's more on 10, 12, 15, and 17. When you start getting 20 and 40, especially 40, I know you do real well on 40. So I've been doing it for 3 years. Last weekend, despite the band conditions, was the first time I ever got DX on 40. And it was in the general portion, and it was a guy in Britain at 7 o'clock our time, and he was up late, and there was an opening, and I was like, oh, this is great. But I specifically went out. I got my extra about a year ago, and I specifically went out after watching some of your videos and some of your comments that the DX is down in the lower extra portion of the US band plan, and I just don't. I've activated down there, and I've tried to go spotted WWFF, hoping I get some more DX, but not so much.
The challenge with worldwide flora and fauna in the evenings is that a lot of the hunters are not on the air. They're on more mornings, our time, early afternoon, and they start fizzling out as the day goes on. But I can go. I did a video in December. I went out. It was about 4:30 our time, so it was just getting dark at 4:30 in the afternoon for us in December. And I set up the performer antenna, and I set it up in a way that on 40 meters that it's got a little bit of directionality to it, but not a lot. So I pointed to aiming long past Japan. I'm gonna say, can I work Japan on a quarter wave vertical? I was down by the beach, so I was had the salty walt amplifier going, right? And I worked 3 or 4 Japan stations that afternoon at 4:30, 5 o'clock when the gray lines opened to Japan. Only in the winter for us. In the summertime, it's not there. But that was a lot of fun. And yes, there's a lot of DX on 40 meters below 7,200. Now, don't go on 7,200, as you know, but below 7,200, there's a lot of DX. And if you spin the dial and you can hear them, then chances are they're going to hear you calling if you can work a couple by just answering their CQs. There's some really big guns out there. Yankee Tango 3 Alpha, I think, is one of them out of Serbia. There's a few guys that are out there every single night calling CQ. I don't usually go out and do parks on the air in the evening just because I just don't like I like the old first thing in the morning versus being out there in the evening. I hunt from home in the I don't see a lot of activity from Europe on 40 meters in the evening doing POTA or flora and fauna. They're already in bed sleeping by that time. But there's just a lot of regular DX guys out there. And if the band's open on 40, that could be a magic band if it's open. But it's a tough one to get sometimes.
Yeah. No, yeah. I agree. I kind of want to circle back around to specifically your video, and there's a bunch of the videos out there about the POTA performer. If you watch those videos, which I've watched a lot of them because I'm building one and I want to deploy it. No one talks about. They talk about there is directionality to it. The 90 degrees. No one talks about which direction you need to aim it for, which direction it goes. So your video, you set it up and you're like, yep, it works. I mean, you set it up and you kind of explain what you're doing about the raised radials. And, I know Michael up in Wisconsin, he did actually 2 or 3 videos, good videos about his POTA performer. And he seems to like it. And he did a POTA Challenger versus a POTA Performer video, which was pretty good. But no one really talked about how to, if I'm out in this field behind me and I want to, do east-west or north-south, which way do I put the 90 degrees so I know which way I'm going? Not one of you talked about it.
So what I did when I went out that day to the beach and aimed it towards Japan, I stood with my phone as my compass and aimed so it was long pass, so it'd be 345 minus 180, so whatever that equals. It's southeast, and I stood there with my compass. Okay, the center point of the V is there, just like that. So I put 45 degrees each way from where I was. Now, yes, there are.
So if you put your compass at the center point of the V, so if I'm like this, it's this way, right? Okay.
Now,
no, I was just curious.
It's not like having a Yagi, you know, it's not that direction. It doesn't have that great of directionality. No, I'm still working people off the sides, the back. I'll say it's a marginal gain. It's nothing, you know, you're not gonna break any records, and nobody behind you people behind you are still gonna hear you fine, right? I just now, when I go out with those, I just put them at 180 degrees, and you know what? I work whoever calls me now. So I just find it doesn't matter. I still, when I'm at a park during the day when the band's good, I'll sit it with 180 degrees apart. I'll get South Africa, Finland, Los Angeles, Alaska. It's true omnidirectional, right?
So you're just doing two radials, right?
Two radials up at whatever the snow spike height is. What's that? 4 feet, 3.5, 4 feet.
Yep.
Works great.
So I just bought off Amazon some road markers. They have a fluorescent paint on them, and they're spiked with like an arrow tip, and they're 4 feet. 10 of them are like $15. So I'm going to use those to elevate my verticals. And then I have a surveyor tripod. So I'm going to build a linked radial system so I can adjust the radials for the band that I'm on.
I like to experiment. That's one thing I love about ham radio, Max, is it's truly experimental. I like to take one performer antenna, and I have two sets of counterpoises. Do one direction and the other completely opposite, you know, perpendicular to it, and see if that makes a difference too. But what I'm going to be doing on Wednesday is I have all the parts now. I'm going to be building the KJ60R Marauder, which is technically two performers with
with the PVC
counterpoise on the top, counterpoise on the bottom.
Yeah, I just saw that video a couple nights ago. It's with the element, right?
Yeah. So I'm gonna build that, and then I've already gone out. I haven't edited the video yet, but I've done two POTA performers as a driven element and a director. Mm-hmm. And of course, I shared the video with Greg, and he said, "Oh, you should have made that a reflector instead of a director. You would have way better gain." So hey, you know what, Greg? We're experimenting. We're having fun. We're doing things and that's what this year for portable is all about for me. I've done all the parks nearby. I mean, and the price of gas is just stupid here, right? You know, $1.90 a liter is just stupid. So I'm not going to be venturing too far unless I go camping. And I still got the Buddy Hex that I haven't used. I got to take that out this summer and try that. But my summer is going to be.
I'd love to try a Buddy Hex.
My summer this year is going to be experimenting with new stuff, just building something, taking it out to my little park down the street that's a POTA location, setting it up because I got a nice big field I can play with there, plenty of shade like you are with a picnic table, and I can sit there for hours and have a blast. You know, that's going to be my summer, Max, except for the trip out west when I come back. And of course, you know, like here, I don't know what it's like in North Carolina, but here the winters are terrible. You don't do a lot of activating in the winter, and then anytime like mid-May to mid-June, end of June is the height of mosquito season. So it's not enjoyable to be out there either for that. We have a very limited window where you can get out and enjoy and sit outside without being bugged by mosquitoes or freezing your butt off. So usually that's the first around this time of year and after Labor Day until the parks close, usually the middle of October. Hey, Max, I'm going to wrap up here because I can smell my barbecue ready. Gonna go throw my steaks on and make dinner for me and the wife. Hey, buddy, good to catch you on here. You know, in closing, any last minute tip, something you wanted to mention that we haven't talked about yet?
Well, I kind of wanted to, and I thought, and I don't know if you're going to keep this in or edit it out, but I kind of thought we were going to go down the road of, you know, why you and I think, you know, the Parks on the Air program is successful and what WWFF can do to be more successif
Bring it up. Now is the time.
I mean, my opinion is that it's all about, you know, awareness. If I call CQ dual activation or, you know, especially if it's a different park number and KFF, people in the States still have not heard about the program. And, you know, I get hunters say, you know, standing by for second operator because they think it's a dual activation with a second person. You know, I think the Parks on the Air, the volunteer program, both, and there's, you know, some really solid Canadian and U.S. operators that are, you know, they're advocates for Parks on the Air. If I go to any of the ham fests, whether it's, the Huntsville, Hamcation or Dayton, we have people out there that take their time and their energy, and they're all volunteers, and they put up booths. I know the Georgia Parks on the Air, the Georgia map coordinator, Claude, Alpha Charlie 5 Sierra Hotel, he is relentless. He goes to all the little city ham fest, and he's pushing, Parks on the Air. And there's another guy, Zach, Alpha India 4 Zulu Delta, he's also a Parks on the Air volunteer on the dev team. He takes his time and he'll go to local ham shows, and he'll put up a booth at his expense and put on a demo, and literally works parks for people walking by. I just don't think there's the awareness. And I'd love to see it take off, but it's gotta have supporters behind it. It's slowly. I have noticed. I don't know about you, but with Sebastian, with Ham 2K Polo, with him being able to use the same program to activate both programs, there has been more activators, which is nice to see. And, all the activators that do activate on WWFF, we kind of all know each other and we help each other out and hunt each other. But man, I think POTA is good for ham. I think WWF is good for ham. And I think it's bringing more and more people into the hobby. And I kind of scratch my head about, the WWFF, come on, I don't know what more. I mean, it's hard. It's hard.
Well, I'll kind of keep it PG kind of focused. And I had a good chat with, the VKFF team down in Australia about this. It's just that there's a bunch of guys who are kind of set in their ways, right? They're happy with the way it is. And, even here in Canada, the same thing. There's the leadership in the Canadian world. And I basically gave up trying to push the envelope too much. That's why I started my own programs. That's really why I started my own program, is that why put all this effort in for something that it's like pushing a big boulder uphill. They're great programs. Don't get me wrong, great programs. And I love the people that I talk to, and I'll continue to do it because of the great, like the Oscar Hotel 1 Mexico's, the Foxtrot 5 November Zulu Ontario's, and the India Kilo 5 Germany Papa Germany's of the world, and all those guys. The Ukrainians that hunt me, the Russian guys that hunt me every single time. There are some really good people there. You're right. There's got to be a desire to push it better. And I still could, I did a video today on how to apply for worldwide flora and fauna awards, because people work me, people work you. Whiskey 4 OMX is very active. A few others. They probably have awards sitting there that they don't even know about because they don't really know the programs exist. So hopefully that creates some awareness. I'm going to try to create some more flora and fauna awareness type things. I like to see the program flourish. I come from a world max in my business world when I was working. Thank goodness I don't do that anymore. But I believe in the law of abundance. There's enough to go around for everyone. So just not POTA, just not flora and fauna, not just lakes and lagoons. There's enough ham radio to go around for everyone.
You are 100% right. I hear you loud and clear. And then the other thing I wanted to say to you, I know you want to get to your barbecue, is, I found you when you were in South Carolina, and I followed you through South Carolina, and I think you were in North Carolina. I was so new to POTA, I didn't realize, I probably should have made the effort to come meet you. But, your early videos are, my wife and I's heart. I mean, you did all those brew and videos series on brew and French fries.
Yeah.
I hopefully when you go out,
I'm
hoping you go out west and do the same thing. Because those were, kind of cool videos.
Yeah, fish and chip Fridays. Yep.
I fast forward a lot of the activation videos.
Well, the thing is too, and nobody, my activation videos when I'm not testing a new antenna, just me going out to a park, and like I watch everybody else's too. All the other YouTube POTA guys, their activation videos always underperform everything because nobody wants to sit there and watch you making a bunch of QSLs. That's why I intentionally leave out a lot of QSLs and just talk about, okay, I bought this $30 ballon off of Amazon and I made a dipole and will it DX? I make a few DX contacts. Okay, that's enough. You don't need to see me do 600 more. Not to slam anyone, Max. I'm not against it, but there's people out there who live stream their activations. Like, to me, I'm not going to watch that.
Sure. Again, there's something for everybody. If that's what you want to do, power to you. I got no problem with it. I'm not going to watch it. I'm going to fast forward it. A lot of Michael's stuff, he's got great videos, and a lot of times I fast forward through his activation, but I'll watch his antenna review or his antenna setup, or, you know, he goes into a lot about the history of campgrounds, which, you know, my wife and I like to explore. And we you know, before we go into a campground, we watch videos of that campground because my wife has to have the best spot at the campground. We talk forever about Parks on the Air and ham radio and activating. It's just, it's so cool. And, you know, it bring the group within the community are just such great people. And there's no way I would have ever met you or talked to you or anybody else for that matter. And I'm going to talk to everybody. I'm going to talk to probably 100 people in a second.
Well, I'll be watching for me. I'll be watching for you after I'm done eating my steak. Anyway, buddy, thanks for coming on and doing this. And thanks for sharing your experience. I really appreciate your friendship and everything you do for this great hobby, Max. And I wish you good luck with your activation tonight.
All right, buddy. Have fun with your steak. See ya.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. I hope my editing of this is okay. We're gonna try to make it work. Anyway, I'm Stuart, Victor Echo 9, Charlie Foxtrot. We'll see you in the next video, whatever that will be. We got some good stuff coming up, so stay tuned and don't forget to subscribe. We'll see y'all later.